Hi friends, Sasirkal. This is Zahra here with my friend Navjot and business partner, and we're going to have some really interesting topics for you today. A quote that many of you have probably heard, whether it was in your physics class or just out and about, is what comes up must come down. Of course, the famous Isaac Newton said this, and he was referring to physical or physics forces. Some people will say this also about our markets, whether it's the stock market or the real estate market. Today we'll of course be focusing on the real estate market and try to determine between Navjot and myself whether this is true or not. We have seen this with our neighbor down south in the States, market crashes, corrections, and we will try to present some information in a fair manner so you can assess for yourself whether this could be the case here. So Navjot, how are you doing today?
I'm absolutely fine. Thank you so much. And the weather is a little warmer than yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm doing absolutely fine.
Good.
What about you?
Yes, good sunshine. Great day to be driving around like we always do.
That's
so
great.
I'm not complaining. No complaints here.
That's good.
Yeah. So did you want to start by outlining the topics for today?
Okay, I think I'm representing the home buyers, or really concerned home buyers who are concerned about the real estate market. The way it is going, it is getting out of reach right now. So what are the factors which can affect? So I think because we are seeing a lot of pre-construction projects, the housing supply will increase. Second, government is doing a lot of efforts to actually aid towards the housing supply and tap on investors. That's not the only thing. Supply chain is improving and the interest rates, they are going up. It will affect the market too. So let's discuss.
Absolutely. You make some really great points, and it's worth noting that this is a complex matter. There isn't one thing or only two things that impact the prices of real estate within Ontario. And of course, every region has its own local intricacies that impact the prices as well. So we'll try to go over some of the bigger topics, as Navjot mentioned, and dive a little bit deeper within them to provide you with that insight. So let's say you talked about housing supply, let's start by talking about that. Do you want to dive a little bit deeper?
Yes, in COVID time, the housing supply was in shortage, especially for the pre-construction homes. According to CMHC, Canadian Mortgage and Housing Society, the numbers of the houses which were under construction in 2021 was 564,000 and 149. This is the 2021 numbers. In 2022, we are already seeing a lot of builders actually releasing their projects. So I think it's gonna increase the supply, which will help in pulling a string to the market, which is going up crazy, and it will bring it down.
Absolutely. That's a very fair point that you're bringing up. It is worth mentioning, though, that although when we look at those Canada numbers, as you mentioned, we have over 1.2 million houses that are under construction. However, what's really important is how many of those homes were actually completed and how many families were able to move in. And when we look at that, it's only about a little over 200,000. And more specifically, because we're focusing on Ontario, we look at all the homes that were supposed to be completed in the past year, which was in Ontario, the number was about 560,000. When we look at the ones that were actually completed, it's closer to 15-16% of that number, so about 82,000. So a lot of those homes weren't actually completed, and later we'll talk about why that is when we discuss supply chain issues and problems. However, that still means there's lots of people that are looking or anticipating a home to come available, not to mention the competition to even get a hold of one of those homes.
Okay, so when we are talking about the pre-construction, before, government wasn't supporting the builders and developers. Right now, they are helping them by reducing the severance time, the zoning change time, and all those permit-related issues which they were facing before, and they were not able to supply enough homes. don't you think it's gonna affect the new home supply going forward?
Absolutely, the governments are doing their best when it comes to bringing more supply on the market. However, there are still lots and lots of delays when it comes to just processing times, comes to minor variances, when it comes to building or creating neighborhoods and transforming them into something higher density. And it's not necessarily always the government to blame, but there's also locals that might be living in these mature and older neighborhoods that don't necessarily want it to be changed into a high density place with lots of condo buildings or multi-residential buildings surrounded, around their family home. So there's a lot of different factors to consider when it comes to bringing this supply, and although they are doing a great job, or at least they're trying their best to do their best job, there's still lots of hurdles along the way.
Okay, that's not the only point or only effort by our federal governments. They are saying they will deliver more affordable housing, and also because our housing market is occupied by a lot of investors and foreign investors, so they are tapping on foreign investors, introducing more taxes. And also the investors who are over here, what they are doing, they may increase their down payment requirement from 25 maybe up to 35%. Right now it's sitting at 20%. Also, the down payment they use to buy an investment property, before that funds could come from anywhere. Right now they are saying that the borrowed funds won't be allowed. If everything comes true, then we will see the investors backing out of the market and our market will come down.
Yes, another good point. Investors, flippers, that group of people, they actually comprise more than 20% of home buyers when we look at our market here. However, it's worth noting, how will we define something that's borrowed versus something that's your own? For example, if I own a home and they've built a lot of equity in it, I've lived in it for a long time, which a lot of these investors have had a home for more than a decade, then if I take out a line of credit or a HELOC or just pull equity out of my home, does that mean that it's borrowed? And if 20 goes to 25%, I doubt there's going to be big changes. 25% is still manageable for a lot of people. However, sure, the 35% number, now that might make it a lot more challenging for investors to then be buying up a lot of these homes that might be for those first-time home buyers that need to get their families a home.
Oh, when you were talking about that, what defines the borrowed funds, it reminded me of a statement of honest mistakes by our prime ministers. So a lot of people actually did take the advantage of CERB funds when they were not even eligible. So the honest mistakes are already forgivable by our governments. But let's talk about the supply chains.
Okay.
When COVID started, we see a lot of people actually got scared. They were not even going to work, and people who were going to work, there were outbreaks there. So the number one supply in BC, when we talk about British Columbia is responsible for almost 80% of lumber supply in Canada. So the biggest supplier there, he had some outbreaks in COVID time. They had to shut down. Because there wasn't enough supply of lumber, the lumber prices actually shot it up to 4 times than the normal price.
Yeah.
But because the things are getting better, lumber prices are coming down, and that's not the only thing. We get a lot of supply from China. That's our plumbing and electrical material. We have a lot of supply coming from China and other countries. In COVID time, everything impacted, so that's why the cost of construction was raised and the supply chain was affected. Now we are seeing improvement in supply chain. I believe that will be another factor which will bring the market down. What do you think about that?
Yes, so of course during the peak of the pandemic and during the peak of all the outbreaks that we'd been seeing across the country, there were a lot of companies and factories and just places of work that had to shut down. However, although we might not be seeing large or widespread shutdowns presently, there's still a lot of issues that are within our supply chain. So when we saw lumber prices go up, not double, not triple, 4 times, although we've seen them stabilize a bit, they haven't returned to the levels that they were at pre-pandemic, right? So it still makes it very challenging, especially when you're talking about pre-construction or new homes, because a lot of these builders, asked for a specific purchase price, and that is a done deal. So it's going to be very challenging for them to now say, well, the price of materials has gone up 4 times, give me 4 times the amount, right? That's not typically how this works. So it puts them in an inconvenient situation, and although we see those prices stabilize, there's still lots of other things going on in the back end. For example, tradespeople. We just don't really have enough tradespeople that these builders need to be working on these projects. I mean, everyone from a framer to the person putting in conduit, and we need all these people to be working on these homes, and unfortunately there's just sometimes a lack of that labor, and sometimes it's just geographically the people are not available to work there. Not to mention a lot of people having to stay back and stay home. So although things are opening up, these things are going to take time to resolve to get back to normal.
Okay, so when we are defining normal now, we are going through Omicron. So next year, if we see another kind of cone or delta, beta, gamma, something like that, you think then we will go through everything again?
I don't know, because that's something that the public health officials have to determine, how much longer and what variants are coming out and how dangerous they are to the population. So it's really just out of our hands. All we can do is just focus on, today and what's happening today, and trying to get our foot in the door if we are trying to get into this market.
Okay, so there is one major point I want to share with you that's related to mortgages and interest rate. There was a meeting on January 26th, and everyone was expecting that Bank of Canada will raise their overnight interest rate from 0.25% to maybe 0.5% by another quarter, but they hold it steady. But they gave the clear indication that now onwards they may not give the promise of holding that interest rate because of our inflation rate is increasing. So they have to come up with the solutions, and also because our real estate market is going so high, so that they are thinking about that too. Now, based on the sources from RBC, BMO and big banks, their CEOs, there will be 5 interest rate hikes in this year. So if Bank of Canada gives 5 hits, it means the overnight rate, which is sitting at 0.25%, will be 1.5% at the end of 2022. Not only that, because the prime rates of bank is directly related to overnight rate, usually we see the prime rate versus the overnight rate, they have a difference of on an average about 2%. It could be a little bit more, a little bit less based on situation. In COVID time, that difference was 2.25. Say by the end of the year, the prime rate goes to the overnight rate goes to 2.45. 1.5. The prime rate, we can see it will be going up to 3.25 to up to 3.75. Based on that, what's going to happen? The monthly mortgage payments, their interest portion will increase in the variables. Mm-hmm. If someone have the ARM mortgages, adjustable rate mortgages, their monthly payment will increase. So investors, they usually go by cash flow, so their cash flow will be directly affected. Even right now, they are sitting at even cash flow. It's not positive and negative, sometimes it's negative, but they are sitting on that even cash flow because they know that market is going up and they are making money from equity. But because, another thing, not just the cash flow over here, the fixed rate mortgages which are already going up, say if they start going up as well, it will pull some of the investors back from the market, which I'm hoping they do, because we do need a stable market. But it will crash or not, we don't know that. We will, because based on the number of facts we have present, the buying power of someone doesn't depend upon the prime rate or overnight rate. It depends upon the qualification rate, which is stress test. So based on stress test, which is 5.25, if your contract rate plus 2% goes over stress test, or they increase that 5.25 benchmark rate to a little higher level, that will affect the buying power. Otherwise, it's not going to affect. But investors, it will affect them for sure, because of the monthly cash flow they are looking at. Now, this is a major factor, I believe, which will help the market a little bit. That's how I can call it. Or it will affect the market for sure. Now, I leave it up to you and the viewers to see what the facts we have presented are true or not. Do you have anything else to say?
I'll just say there's lots of interesting information that we shared, and as Navjot was talking about interest rates, like he said, one or two might not impact investors, but once we have 4 or 5, now that's where it might remove some of the demand from the market. So it'll be interesting to watch as we progress through 2022, where this demand goes, how the supply changes, and ultimately where we end up, whether we're still going to be on that strong seller's market, move towards more balanced. I don't see us going to a buyer's market anytime soon. However, how much closer that pendulum can swing towards a buyer's market or a balanced market. So decide for yourselves. There's lots of information that we've provided. If you have questions, you want to chat about it, or you just want to share what you think will happen, both of us are happy to take your calls, your texts, your emails, and we can just have a discussion about real estate in Ontario right now.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and we will wait for your thoughts on real estate market, where it will end up. It will crash, it will settle down, or it will keep on increasing. So please, if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, do leave your comments. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Yes, bye.
Bye-bye.